Welcome to Unmasked Truths, our first official episode, and it's with Eden talking about the truth about emotional struggles.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, no prob. Like one thing, I just I hate intros like so much because I just want to get straight to the point, and
Yeah,
I'm just still trying to work on that.
fair enough. That's okay.
Yeah, yeah. All right, so for emotional struggles wise, it's gonna be breaking down into like three things: self talk, insecurity, and trauma. I want to start with self talk. Do you rationalize a lot when you go through something and like self talk and like break things down logically? Or
Um, I'd say sometimes it's kind of just a mix of both because when you're going through something very like emotional and tragic, it affects you in like different ways. Kind of you can think about it very differently.
mm,
So sometimes I just kind of tend to think logically about it, like how much is this really going to affect me in the future? Is this the main thing that I need to be worrying about? Like, how much is this hurting me, and how much do I have to help myself kind of heal to get over it? So, in a sense, I kind of do break it down in a way like that.
yeah, because like for me, something for me that I do is, especially when I go through like really big phases in my life, there's like especially those like really big things that change our mindset forever. I sometimes like I'm the type of person to like just really talk to myself more than I talk to people during that phase in like a span of like 8 months, which is like actually like crazy. I just learn a lot about myself more that way, which is like cooler. But yeah, it's kind
Yeah,
of like a puzzle.
it's definitely like a learning experience. And I think that's like a big thing that people kind of don't really understand is that all the experiences you have can teach you a lesson. And most
Mm,
people just kind of take it as like, oh, why is this happening to me? Like, this is awful, instead of what is this teaching me? Like, how can I grow from this? Even though sometimes we don't have control over the situations that we're in, most of
yeah.
the time they can still teach us important lessons, no matter how random that can be useful throughout life.
How do you view the idea of like therapy? Because like how I view like therapy is in a way like it's kind of like professional advice, but it's not like the therapist isn't necessarily meant to like cure you. You have to like find it yourself, but it's like a really good tool. Like how do you view it?
Yeah, so I think for me, when I think about therapy, I think about again getting professional help, but those
Mm,
professionals, like you say, aren't there to cure you, excuse me. They're more there to like help you figure out how to deal with whatever you're going through because a lot
mm,
of the times people don't know what to do or how to react to things or how to think through things logically in a way that won't hurt them. And going to therapy and being able to talk those things out and get professional advice and actually taking it, even if it seems like completely ridiculous and like it won't work at all, most of those people, especially if you have like good therapists, know what
yeah.
they're doing. So they're able to give actual professional advice that will help, even though at the time it might seem like it won't. And it helps you build those kind of strategies and you learn those techniques on how to be able to help yourself on your own. And then eventually you're able to take everything that you learned in that space and apply it without needing as much help from that professional.
Okay, okay. How do you view like pills? Like for example, an antidepressant pill. So there's something I want to share before you answer this. So
Mhm.
there's something I seen online which was actually really interesting. So I saw someone talk about like how like for an antidepressant pill, it was like a cool metaphor where antidepressants pills purpose is when a train is off its tracks, the train is supposed to get back on it. And I feel like that's how like antidepressant pills are like supposed to be used. So like how do you view them? Because like I see them as tools, not something we rely on.
Yeah, I feel like those types of pills are more for like support for people who are just like having cases that are really severe where
Yeah.
talking to someone like a therapist just isn't getting through to them, and it's not helping them because sometimes some people are just so far down the rabbit hole that they're unable to do anything with the advice that they're given. And I feel like antidepressants help kind of like they're like a kind of like a shoulder or a person kind of to lean on when you just can't trust anything and you just can't like believe in yourself. They help you kind of get into that mindset where you can start to kind of accept and take an advice. So it's obviously a really slow process, but from there you can build up and then eventually you don't need those antidepressants to help make you more vulnerable to those like positive decisions rather than the negative ones.
I mean, yeah, for sure. I feel like every situation's obviously different where like certain people obviously react to certain things, but it's just there's certain people like obviously like we don't 100% know what it is, and I'm just answering these from like experiences that like a psychiatrist that I know, it's like my someone in the family of mine, and he was telling me about certain situations that he had to talk to, like he talks to suicidal their patients, and then he talks to other people that like lost everything, which is like crazy. And I understand like at those situations that's when pills are the most effective, because you need to somehow change. But I feel like it's a problem when people are just using it for the rest of their life, and that also like alters like their brain. My the that he told me to, which is really interesting.
Yeah, especially for like people who are dealing with real like severe mental illness,
Yeah,
they're more prone to like that addiction because when you're on antidepressants, obviously it helps you to feel not as crappy, and
yeah,
people love those kind of like dopamine hits and stuff. So
exactly,
there's definitely like an issue where those people are already vulnerable to begin with, and this makes them more vulnerable to getting addicted to that like dopamine hit that you get from the antidepressants, and it just kind of it's just kind of like a double-edged sword.
exactly. And I always wondered like about how during those types of patients that like their self-talk is like their level of like breaking things down and rationalizing, because I view self-talk as something you're rationalizing, right? You're thinking and you're breaking things down, and you're building things apart together. So I just wondered like their self-talk, it's so low because they're so down the rabbit hole. So something I'm curious for you is, do you how does self-talk like influence your emotions? I'm just curious about that.
I feel like self-talk is so people don't realize how powerful and effective it is and how much like it can like sway a person and how they're feeling because sometimes when you have those really down days, when you
Yeah.
talk to yourself and you like look at yourself in the mirror or you're just thinking about yourself or like something small and you're just having a down day where you can't support yourself and you
Mm.
start to talk negatively like, oh, I wish I could change this, oh, I want to make this better, oh, why is this the way that it is, it brings down your confidence and your self-esteem and it raises those insecurities and that vulnerability. So that's why even when you have really like depressing days, it's very important that you're still trying to uplift yourself, even though it might feel completely stupid and ridiculous and you might not believe it yourself. Saying it out loud helps prevent that like spiraling out of control kind of emotions.
Yeah, no, that makes sense for sure. So then I'm curious, so does self-talk, okay, even if you're, like, just, like, chilling, right? You're not even, like, in a phase or anything. Just self-talk in general is so important to have because let's just say if you're in a, uh, y you have to do a presentation, right? And, before you do the presentation, you go to the bathroom just to calm yourself down. If you can, like, talk yourself out and convince yourself to like calm down and you like somehow just like think about it and like how to do it in the span of like 3 minutes, like you're like chilling. I did that to myself so many times. And if you think about it, self-talk, any skill, right? Like happiness, um flow state, multitasking, all of these are skills, right? And
Yeah.
if you can maximize your self-talk, you're going to just like see yourself in such a different way that you can really just do anything just by persuading yourself. But it's also it's important to really have positive self-talk because not a lot of people have that. People have the other way around of negative self-talk, and that's what results into self-esteem lows, that results into like anxiety and all that stuff. And social media is one of the factors of that.
Yeah, I self-talk is definitely a huge tool in determining kind of like how you view yourself because it's your own voice and it's what's making you self-aware of yourself. So when you talk negatively about yourself, you're also like aware of how negative everything is, even if it's just in your head and you're just like, oh, like if you're wearing an outfit and I'm like, oh, I think it looks stupid. Even if it doesn't seem like it's a huge deal,
Yeah.
that it just kind of sticks with you over time.
Oh, that is actually interesting. How about, okay, this is a personal one.
Yeah,
Can
go
you
ahead.
tell me a scenario where you self-talk really helped you out?
Ooh, okay. Sometimes during the school year, I would
Yeah.
have encounters with people that were just extremely negative. There was a period of time where I didn't even want to go to school or do anything because I was unsure about like what was going to happen, who was I going to talk to in my classes, like who was I going to partner up with, like where was I going to put my energy and my time. Sometimes I just didn't feel like I had anyone who was like who I was able to share that with
Mm, I
because
see.
it was everything was just kind of like falling apart and I didn't understand what was happening, but I was going through a really strong period where I was constantly reminding myself, like, do not settle for the minimum. Like, be a strong person. Everything will kind of come back and it'll go your way. Because I've always kind of been a believer that, you shouldn't, you attract what you believe and you shouldn't chase it because then that means it's running away from you. So when I just let all of this negativity go instead of chasing it, I started attracting all of this positive energy and everything ended up working out for me. So despite how hard this situation and the change was that I had in my life, by telling myself that things were going to work out and eventually it was going to pass because I knew it wouldn't last forever, that I would like come out on top and I would be okay and I would continue to progress as a person instead of taking two steps back because my self talk was so positive.
That is interesting. Has that improved over time throughout the years or
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So I sometimes I go through like really difficult periods and I've definitely been through some very unique experiences that not a lot of other people have are ever really gonna go through, and at that time it just kind of breaks you down as a person and
mm,
sometimes you just don't really know what to do. But then when I actually started getting the help that I needed, I was able to utilize these tools that I had that were breaking me down because at that time my biggest enemy was myself. But by learning how to utilize those tools that are like within you instead of using them against yourself, you're using them for yourself.
See, so how would you like differentiate like negative self-talk versus positive self-talk?
It really depends on kind of the tone and the attitude and the meaning behind what you're saying. Because what people say can have so many different meanings. Like, if I'm thinking to myself, like,
Yeah,
oh, this is super interesting,
yeah,
like I'm invested in what it is and it's a positive connection that I have with whatever thing it is. But if I'm looking at something, I'm like, this is interesting. It just comes off very different. Like, oh, I don't really like this. And it's just when you talk to yourself, it's very important that you make it clear to yourself how you feel because sometimes you don't know how you feel about anything until you just talk it out because it kind of takes that kind of jumble that like almost like a ball of emotions, like a
yeah.
ball of yarn, and it just kind of falls into this string and it kind of unknots and it organizes itself. And all of a sudden it's not this huge terrifying cloud of emotion. It's more organized and it's easier to look at and understand.
I see, I see. So something because it's different for men and women like how they talk to themselves, right? But personally, something before I get into like I want to get into a personal experience of mine. Personally for me, an experience I guess I'll go more general, but let's just okay. The way I talk to myself is okay. I wouldn't say this is toxic, but it's in a good way where like I kind of trained myself to like automatically talk to myself instantly when I'm in like in something, right? In a situation or in a phase, and I would talk to myself in a way that like I'm giving myself a lecture in like in a really rough tone. I don't know why that's the case, but I find that a lot more calming because like I feel like I have something in my head guiding me through a scenario in a really rough tone so then I can get through to myself because I've noticed that when people are a lot more calmer to me and like a lot more I guess how would I say this? If people are more just like telling me it, I sometimes just like sometimes don't listen. So like having a bit of a rough tone in my head can really just like help me through it. So I don't know. I know that might be weird, but it just like it's just interesting to like that's just my thought process.
No, that's not weird at all. Sometimes different things work for different people, and there's no point in having self talk with yourself if you're not going to be able to retain the information or the like conclusion that you come to. So some things work for different people. Like I know for me personally, breaking things down, deciding how much it matters, and being able to think through it logically and then
Yeah.
process my emotions afterwards is helpful for me because I'm able to kind of break it all down and see every angle of it.
Yeah.
Um, but that doesn't work for everyone. Not everyone, functions the way I do. Like you need to be rougher with yourself so it's easier for you to kind of retain like the information that you're gaining from your self-talk because sometimes we
Okay.
miss a lot of details or anything like that when we aren't talking to ourselves because it just makes everything kind of clearer and you're actively thinking about it. But some people just like everything just kind of works for everyone and everyone kind of has to figure out what works for them.
So do you do something similar or like the way I do it?
I'm probably a little bit more calm depending on the severity of the issue. No matter what, I kind of tend to be calm, but I definitely have to, like, if I'm going through something that's like upsetting, sometimes I have to deal with my emotions first. And then once I'm like able to actually have a logical conversation with myself, then I'm able to work through and be like, oh, okay, you know, how much energy do I need to put into this? How much healing do I have to do from this? How much has this set me back? So I'm a lot more logical and calm in the sense that, like, I'm, I just retain that information that I'm gaining from myself a little bit better.
From like, I guess from a traumatic point of view, right? Could self-talk, because like as I said at like the beginning of this, how self-talk, when you go through something and you self-talk, it's like a puzzle, right? And you try to connect all the pieces together and you're trying to build everything. Do you seek, like, do you talk to other people about it? I'm just curious.
Um, Sometimes it really depends on like the severity of the event,
Yeah,
because if it's something like extremely serious,
yeah.
trying to cope with that yourself is just going to hurt you in the end.
For sure,
Yeah,
yeah.
you're not going to be able to work through things all by yourself because sometimes it's just such a heavy load that you're not going to be able to carry it all by yourself, and you need someone to kind of help you disperse it, not take it on with you, but just someone who can like carry the load for a little bit. When your arms get tired,
Yeah.
then you're able to take it back and it'll feel like less weight, even though nothing about the situation has changed.
I don't know what it is, but like for me, obviously everyone's different, but personally for me, I I'm just the type of person to like not tell anyone ex with even with the hardest things. And I don't advise that because you need, as you said, you need someone to help you get through it, right? As you said, when your arms get weak. But for me, like, I just never tell anyone just because I feel like, especially for like men's mental health, right? Like, men don't talk about their emotions because they're scared that they're gonna be seen weak, right? But for me, like, I just don't ever tell anyone, and I solve it on my own. And this can take like months to years. Like, I've been through a phase for 10 years, and I never told anyone, and I got out of it recently. And I was able to, I got so much more mentally resilient. But I don't advise doing that because that's like not good for your mind, but it's a good reward at the end. But I don't advise doing that.
I think when it comes to like mental health between genders, there's definitely a very big difference because just kind of all through society, men haven't been able to express themselves emotionally without being looked down on because they've always been kind of viewed as like a provider and a protector.
Yeah.
And neither of those qualities really have any sort of emotional like relevance in them, which is really upsetting because men and women alike often go through very similar things. Like the experiences you go through as a woman don't just change because you're a woman. Obviously, there's some things where it's like women will experience it more, but that doesn't stop men from experiencing it completely. And I think that I would never shame anyone, man or woman, for having those emotions and expressing them, because just kind of bottling it all up and not doing anything about it is extremely unhealthy. And I know a lot of people think that, oh, like it won't hurt me. It's better this way if I can just kind of bottle it up and forget about it. But a lot of people don't realize the long term emotional damage that it does to them. And it just continues to further the cycle of men not being able to express their emotions because they're scared to open up. And then in turn, it's like women don't experience that emotional side of men. So when they do, it's off-putting for them, and then it's just this continuous cycle where people can't open up because they're scared to open up because they're scared of the judgment, and it's just this huge cycle.
I I feel like correct me if I'm wrong, but for men, I think the reason why they're not so emotional and they're more logical in a way is because let's just say let's link in like relationships wise. I think for men's mindset that it's like if they're emotional with a girl, then I think it's a turn off for the woman. Would you agree with that or disagree?
Personally for me, it's not a turn off at all. I think for a lot of women, it could be just because men in general have never expressed their emotion again, just because of that ongoing kind of cycle where they don't express their emotions. So it's very unusual to a woman when men actually do express their emotions and their feelings, because most of the time women have never been able to talk to men about that or like make that emotional connection. So when something comes out like that, it comes out very awkwardly, which makes it difficult to have those connections.
I think it's realistically because you said this in the show where like men are like protectors and providers. So when a man goes emotional, that's when you said about like how it's a bit weird, it's a bit awkward, right? So just like it's just I think women are just not like used to it. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, pretty much, because that's just kind of how men have been viewed, which is unfortunate because I feel like men and women alike should be able to do whatever they want and not have to stick to some rigid stereotype, because then it enforces all of these harmful beliefs, which just make the cycle so much worse.
How do you think men and women were throughout like history? I want your opinion on that.
I
The
think
like relationships wise,
in
like
terms of relationships, just for me personally, I don't think all relationships are going to be 50-50 all the time, but support is crucial. And obviously, throughout history, it's just been like a rigid, like men have to do this and women have to do this, and that's just kind of continued into our society. Although it might be less strict,
mm,
it's still there. It's still a social concept um, that you can see, which maybe makes like that cycle for men's emotion, it makes it less extreme, but it doesn't make it any less harmful.
I feel that men and women go through trauma a lot differently because their brains are different, right?
Yep.
So like how does acknowledging past trauma impact your emotional well-being?
It kind of depends on how much time I've had to sit with that trauma, because I know I saw this thing the other day that was like when men and women kind of go through a breakup,
Yeah.
it's the woman kind of takes it all in as it is, and she starts hurting and trying to process it right away. Whereas the man, who most likely isn't as emotionally available, isn't coping with it right away. So, in turn, when the woman finally starts to heal and get over it and be able to move on, the man is just starting to realize what is happening. And it makes me really kind of sad, because I feel like it's just very different between both genders how we process things. Um, I think for me personally, in terms of actual like traumatic events, I'm kind of that same way with the woman where I just take it all in at once when it happens, and I don't try and ignore it or bottle it up or push it to the side just for it to come back to bite me in the butt later. It's important to me that I work through it, and depending on how severe it is, it'll affect me for a long time, and sometimes it might never go away, and it's just something that I have to live with. And soon I'll be able to, live with those scars.
You know, Something I find really interesting is like how I view trauma is essentially like when we go through like traumatic events in our life, I feel that it's more of, I guess, something that we learn about ourselves, and especially one of those really big triggering traumatic events in our life that can like destroy us for the rest of our life. But I feel that over time, right? Because time is the best healing, right? So then I see it as a way that can lift us up and become more stronger, or we can people can view it as a way that it could be the most that it could like destroy their life for the rest. So I think it's just a way of how you view it at the end, regardless how bad it was. Because like traumatic events I've been through, it was really bad, and I think how I view them were, instead of me like saying, okay, I'm gonna let them destroy me, I'm gonna try to bring that up due to the idea of self-talk and stuff. But unfortunately not everyone has that ability. So and that's why therapy exists, right? To help them view their trauma differently.
Yeah, some people's personalities and mindsets may not allow them to have the ability to be able to heal properly or will lead them down the right path, essentially. Um, and again, that's kind of where like self talk and the actual like mental uplifting comes in. A lot of people don't have that kind of appreciation for themselves or for anything around them, which makes it a lot difficult for those positive connections for themselves to be made.
From like, I guess from like the healing and resilience side, right? Could you explain the concept of like post-traumatic growth and how it manifests inside of us?
Um, I'd say it's really easy to pick a different, like a negative path to go down because it's often the easier path to follow when people kind of start to ruin their lives with negative self talk and using other things to kind of fill that void. It's a lot harder to actually uplift yourself and be able to choose the right coping mechanism. Um, Depending on how you're able to cope with things, it could often end up making the scar that you're trying to heal, it could often make the wound bigger or smaller. But regardless, there'll still be a scar from that healing. Just it depends how you take it in the time of healing will determine how much of an effect it leaves on you.
Don't you think in a way like scars are is a good thing? Although I know they're really, really bad, but I'm just thinking that if you have like a scar of something that you've been through and it was really traumatic, that event has really opened your eyes and you live life differently from it. So do you think scars in a way are good things? Like trauma, it's
Oh,
good to go through trauma.
yeah, absolutely. Almost in a way, sometimes it's what people it's kind of like the really awful thing that they didn't know they needed because it just provides this whole life shift. Like, I can look at photos of myself before an event happened and be like, who is that? Like, like, you can just kind of tell from a photo before an event happened, like, who was I then versus who am I now? You're able to see it because it just radiates this new personality, this new confidence, this new difference that you have with the older versions of yourself. You've been able to grow. And I know for me, I was able to gain appreciation for the littlest things in life. I was able to watch a movie in English class and have a deep, empathetic understanding and appreciation for the movie, and it provided me so much insight on what was actually happening. So, from that, I was able to just make deeper connections, and that was just through a movie. But being able to apply those lessons that you've learned to just little life things like that makes it easier to grow as a person.
Do you think, I don't know if you know this or not, but do you think like, so when we were talking about the idea of how you said trauma in a way is a good thing because when bad things happen, it makes us better, right? Do you think like in a way like if we were to if people with like big traumatic events were to like gratitude journal, do you think that would be a good, like, I guess you could say a coping mechanism or like an activity to get out of it, just to get their mind shifting towards gratefulness through like an experience they've been through?
I'd say yeah, absolutely, because journaling is like it's like a physical way to self-talk. You can go back and reread what you wrote if you want, or even when you're just writing it in the moment, you're thinking about it more because you're actually physically using your brain to think about what you want to write and then writing it on the paper. So it has twice as much, like, it causes twice as much awareness about
Yeah.
how you feel. And most of the time, when people journal, they might not even journal about exactly what's bothering them. They might just want to talk about their everyday lives, because sometimes that can be what's making their healing process a lot worse, is just your everyday life. Like, if you have a lot of assignments, but you're also going through something extremely traumatic, you're not going to have as much time to cope through that event when you have so many other stressful things happening in your life. So being able to just take like even 10 minutes just to sit down and write, because it has double the effect, or you're doing double the work and double the thinking, it has double the effect.
I guess you could kind of, yeah, so for like gratitude journaling, um this might be a triggering one, but what I'm about to say, but for example, let's just say if someone were go through like heartbreak, right?
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, heartbreak's like the worst thing imaginable, depending even what age you are. Like our age, people in their 20s, heartbreak's heartbreak, right? So when someone goes through it and someone gratitude journals about it, about how this heartbreak taught them to be this type of person or that type of person, and you write your mindset during that time, and then 5 days later you write that mindset again, and then like your current mindset. I've done that before, and I've seen that my mindset has really like changed, and I've seen the improvement because I've like written it down from detail to detail, which is hard, but you just really got to think.
Yeah.
It is kind of like a diary, but it's not really a diary, if you know what I
Yeah.
mean. It's deep journaling.
Consistency is definitely a huge thing when it comes to journaling and any other coping mechanism, because any coping mechanism you have automatically becomes not as valuable when you're not being consistent with it. That's why, if I'm going to journal about something, I'm going to journal about it every day, because that daily improvement is kind of what matters the most.
And also, yeah, insecurity can for sure play out for that too, because like journaling and insecurity can really help the mind like understand what's really going on, and you would really see that insecurity is just really in your head, because like I've been through one, and that took me a long time, and essentially to get out of it. And I really just, when I got out of it, it really like changed my mind how people like don't care, because like people have like their own issues, right? And people have their own mindset. So insecurities aren't really what other people think. It's about what you tell about yourself. But there is an instance where people will like spot out insecurities, but people, those are just insecure people themselves. No good person would say that, right? But that's only because they're insecure of themselves, so they point it out. So it's bullying. bullying is insecure. Bullies are insecure.
Yeah. I think any person who's truly happy with themselves is not worried about what other people think, and in turn are not like worrying about other people and what they're doing. And those insecure people often have really negative self-talk because like I could like just eat away at myself, like, oh, like nitpick everything, like, oh, I don't like this, I want to change this, I should start doing this, like I want to improve this. And sometimes the qualities that people have aren't really able to be changed, like people's face shape, the size of their nose, their lips, like their body type. Like a lot of things are out of our control, and a lot of people don't recognize that. And I think that having that negative self talk further influences that jealousy and that hatred and that insecurity towards yourself, but also towards others, because often people start to hate on other people, insecure people, and jealous people start to hate on the people that have what they want. But then the other people who are content with themselves and are accepting and loving and empathetic towards themselves do not care what other people have that they don't, because they are content and happy with themselves and what they have, so they don't feel the need to put others down because they don't feel that jealousy over what other people have.
Hmm. Do you think that like insecurity can also fall in trauma too? Because like about like how you said about jealous people, and how the fact that people who are happy about themselves won't point it out, but people who are like insecure. So have you ever experienced with like insecurities throughout your life?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I've definitely seen a change from when I was super insecure to being extremely less and almost not insecure at all. A difference in just kind of my mood and my mindset. Because even like when people go through something like heartbreak, it's like their first instinct is like, oh, what's wrong with me? Like, am I not good enough? Am I not pretty enough? Do I
Yeah.
not work out enough? Like, it's just kind of everyone's first instinct. It's kind of just where they go. And again, that's kind of where self talk comes in, is like, well, what if it was just not right? What if it just wasn't working out? We just weren't meant for each other or whatever. And that's kind of where self talk becomes really important. In terms of actual like insecurity, I definitely noticed like where I've been super insecure and I'll just be, doing my everyday activities. I'll be scrolling on TikTok and I'll see this really pretty girl come up, and maybe she has like blue eyes, and I'm like, "Oh god, like she's just like, I wish I had blue eyes." And then it kind of creates this internalized hatred where you're like, "She has something I don't." So instead of you being accepting and happy with what you have, you're building up this hatred over time with these little thoughts and negative self talk and actions that eventually just becomes this huge ball of just remorse and disgust and hatred, which is not good to hold on to or have in general at all to begin with. But most people, obviously, it's not an emotion. You can't just kind of escape it. Hatred is gonna happen every so often, but you definitely should not let it control or dictate your life at all. It shouldn't be like a main feeling or experience that people have, because it just, everything in your life starts to change and evolve around that hatred instead of that positivity.
Yeah, that's it's the idea of like how social media, I know this is cliche, but if you really think about it, like people on social media, right? So for example, if I had like let's just say if I did art, right? And I posted my art throughout, right? I people who like do hobbies, follow other influencers who do that hobby, right? So I do art, and then I see someone else. I'm like, oh crap, this is like insane. And some people would, no, it's normal. A lot of people do this. Um, where they would like, compare themselves, saying, "Oh wow, okay, damn." And then, but in reality, it's not really like that's not the case. It just everyone is in their own timelines, like, or maybe your timeline just begun. So I guess now actually having a realistic example, how I think. I was telling someone about it who does art, and she was telling me that looking at these other arts, and then I'm like, but I think my art's bad because of them. And I looked at her art, and it is actually like insane, but unfortunately social media has drilled it in her mind that her art's bad, but in real it's not. It is like actually insane. It's like next level I've never seen before. It just that's how social media can just destroy your mind.
Yeah, and I think it it can also depend on who you are too, because truthfully, a lot of people miss details about themselves that other people see. Like, other people can see things in me that I don't see in myself. And realistically, there's always going to be someone out there that's better than you at what you do. And um, it's important to be content with yourself so that you're able to not to like have those kind of be content with yourself and what you're able to do, because then even if like my art is bad, going off that metaphor, even if my art was bad, I can it might not be as good as someone else's, but it's my art and it's my unique piece, and I can still improve from that. And it's definitely a big stepping stone for a lot of people, is learning to be okay with yourself and to thrive alone and not try and build yourself up and around other people's standards. Like, maybe my art style is different from the best artist in the world, but that doesn't mean that my art is like not valuable.
Exactly.
And you can be content with not being the best because you know you can improve yourself, but you don't always have to be working to improve. You can just kind of sit and be comfortable with where you are. And that's a big lesson and a tough pill to swallow for a lot of people, is that nobody is below average. Everyone is just themselves, and they have their own talents and their own standards and their own personalities and their own lives. And it's just about being content with those standards and those personalities in your life that makes the big difference in your mental health, in your insecurity, in your ability to heal and be supportive and empathetic and happy.
Yeah, it just sucks because like when I see people like do like so good, and I see their art piece, and they're scared to post it because they think it's bad. I hate that so much, but it just it that's what our minds do. And honestly, I feel like when I was talking about skills, about like how happiness is a skill, self-talk is a skill, flow state is a skill, and all, I've noticed that our minds tend to be more negative, and then we have to learn how to make it positive. Like that's just like our default like state, just negative, and then we have to learn how to be positive. What I was saying earlier, like, have you ever encountered a situation where your feelings of insecurity were in conflict with your capabilities?
Um, yes, definitely. And I think that's why, again, like, learning like the skills of happiness and self-talk they're hard things to learn, and they don't just come with time. Sometimes like those skills can be more Like, some people have those skills more developed because they've had so many different experiences. I know for me, when I have that negative self-talk, like, I went to go get my driver's license yesterday. I took my driver's test yesterday, and I was so nervous, and I was just kinda all in my head, like, "What if I do
Mm,
this, or what if I do that?" And all that negative self-talk kind of developed into, like, it stopped me from being able to, like, drive, like, competently. I still
mm.
passed because
Oh, nice. Good
I
job.
was still able to, like, kinda talk to myself and be like, "Oh, yeah, I'm okay. This is okay. I'm doing good. I just need to relax." But that anxiety, that self-doubt, definitely it portrays on you, and when you doubt your ability to do something, it it reflects, and it makes that's why confidence is so important. Like, confident people are often viewed as much more attractive because they have that confidence, and you can see it reflecting on their face and, like, portraying in their personality and their physical appearance. Whereas people who might not be as comfortable with themselves aren't aren't as confident, are less, like, I don't want to say less valued, but they're not as appreciated. And it's just, again, it's kind of like a cycle where it's like, oh, I'm not appreciated by anyone the way I want to be appreciated. Maybe that means that I'm not worth it. But to break that cycle, you have to be like, I only need myself. And when I'm having this negative self talk, it reflects on me, and it makes this energy and this appearance that I have much more unfriendly and negative and unapproachable.
I find it like crazy how when you're talking about how people are confident and as you said, they seem more attractive, but it's just crazy that you could see anyone that is so confident and you would not know if they're going through something or not. And people are so good at masking their emotions. It's crazy.
Yeah. Um, I think people who mask their emotions are doing it for reasons that might not be beneficial for them. Like men who mask their emotions because they're scared that they're going to be, like, reflected negatively upon, or people who just hide their emotions in general because it's just quote unquote uncool to be emotional. But sometimes it's like it just really depends, I think.
Yeah, for sure. I think it just, as you said, it's like they think it's uncool, but it could also be because, like, let's just say, a father had kids and they had a wife and everything, right? And they're working, right? And like their wife's working and everything, right? I just feel that the father's role is, as you said, to protect and provide, right? And that just when they're going through something, right? They tend to mask it in because they think that it's just isn't worth talking about and just something that they have to go through themselves because they have so much responsibilities to take care of their wife and kids is what is one of the reasons I'd say so.
Yeah, and then especially too when the roles are, like, reversed and maybe it's the woman that's, like, the breadwinner. What
Yeah.
is she gonna do when she comes home from her job, and maybe the dad stays at home and she comes home from her job and she's emotionally exhausted, but again, it's just kind of difficult because it's just whoever is supposed to be the provider and the protector for the family is supposed to be like a shield, but a lot of people just are ignorant about the fact that like shields also get stabbed with swords, kind of thing.
Exactly. Yeah. No matter how big your defense is, it's not
Yeah.
like it's not impregnable. You know, it's like it's
Yeah.
gonna go in eventually.
Yeah, you're still gonna have like attacks thrown at you.
All right, Eden.
That was
That
good.
was the end. But I hope you enjoyed it.
I did. That was really nice. I liked how it was like really positive when we were able to talk positively because that's a huge thing.
Yeah, for sure. All right, guys. This is the truth about emotional struggles. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.